Hi everybody, welcome to Archie Marathon. What are we talking about today?
I don't know.
Well, why don't we just talk about stuff and then at the end, you just sort of slap it together in editing and just post-justify it.
That's a good idea.
This episode's about post-justifying.
Roll intro.
Roll intro.
We've got matching tops today.
Hi everybody, welcome to International Wear a Pink T-shirt to Work Day. Are you wearing a pink T-shirt today, like us?
Leave a comment.
All right, so there's a bit of a no-no word in architecture, post-justifying. Supposedly it's a bad thing. We think it's a really important thing. One of the most important fundamentals of architecture is post-justifying. Why is it bad though?
Well, I think a lot of people do it last minute when they haven't got any substance in their work and they're trying to make shit up.
I want you to feel challenged, interrogated, tired. I want you to feel like I hate you personally. Because I do.
And that's where, especially at universities, lecturers get really annoyed. But we actually think it's a really important part of the process because design is not linear.
Yes, it's often presented as linear, but the process of design is not linear.
When I was at university, and I've seen it taught time and time again, students are instructed to do a site analysis, then to go and read a lot and research, then to take a theoretical, philosophical position, and then to go and start drawing and designing. That linear process, while it's informative as an educational tool, is not how people design. You know, design thinking happens while you draw. And anybody that, and I think we see lots of really poor examples of built theory. So people adopting a theoretical position and then just going and making a wobbly shape and saying, okay, engineers, fill this up full of steel because I've adopted this position. Where the most rigorous work seems to be when people think through via drawing and learn what they're doing intuitively at first. I think most design is intuitive and you kind of discover why you're doing what you're doing as you draw through it. What do we mean?
Oh, we've got the plaza aunties.
Plaza aunties.
The Chinese plaza aunties.
I love this tune.
So what we mean by post-rationalizing is you use that during the design process. You need to work out why you're doing something and trying to make a design idea do as much as possible. So instead of just one thing, it may have one reason for it to exist. Try to find more. You try to design in those ideas properly. So rather than just a throwaway line, you make it do exactly what you say it could do.
What I find with my process, I used to try and diligently adopt a position first and then design something. And what I found was that often got in the way with just the boring stuff. I now, in my design process, have to start with the boring stuff. What are the council setbacks? What's happening with overshadowing? Where's the best orientation? And I actually start with the boring stuff because once you know those sort of legislative and environmental parameters, then you can start to play with ideas. Where if you come with an overwhelming
Conceptual,
position,
yeah.
Quite often that's in conflict with what you can get away with. And we see that all the time, especially in Melbourne. These built theories where you can go, oh, okay, council didn't agree with that, so you've taken sort of a chunk out of one side. And the architecture becomes little more than just this dedication to a narrative.
I think you need both. I think you need to have the constraints and all these other issues and things, pragmatics you have to deal with, as well as the conceptual. So again, design is not linear. There's no
Exactly.
one way or the other. So I think the more you know, the more you just, again, you got to get your hands dirty, start working, work out what the f is going on, and then respond to it. But at some point, yes, you do stop and step back and go, what have I done? What is the proposal? What is the party? And why is that a good idea? And why can it be better? How can it do better things? So instead of having a response that is, you know, there's the main idea and then you have all these little extra ideas surrounding it, you're trying to make that idea do more.
So I guess this thing about adopting a position is as you go through your career, like I have a position as a person, as a professional, sort of this ethical basis from which I design from. So I can just launch into the boring stuff. But the individual project, I often find you've got to discover why that particular project is important. And I do discover that later. But design's not linear. You can start anywhere. Like somebody like Mark Austin will often start from a detail. Oh, look at this. I want that material to join like that. And that's absolutely a legitimate starting point, because every starting point is legitimate. It doesn't have to start from site analysis. You know, you need to analyse the site. It's about rigour. It's about making sure you cross all these boundaries as you get to them.
Exactly.
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 Kevin agrees with me.
For once.
Well, this is where I think we end up with rigorous design, is you start drawing things. You start with the drawing, not necessarily with the thinking, because once you draw something on paper, you can start to poke it and prod it and go, well, what could this be? If I am doing something that's about 2 parts or something that's linear on this particular site with this orientation, what can that lead to?
Yes.
And once you get more experience, you can test that out really quickly.
And that's also an important skill that's not really talked about, this fast thinking of what can it be?
Oh,
I think, yeah, that's the key thing, instead of, I guess, being taught in sort of linear way of drawing and thinking, going, we're going to make this conceptual model and then out of toilet paper and burnt cigarettes or whatever, and then you try and make a building out of that.
Yeah.
It is trying to work out why does it look like this? What can it do?
Yeah, the speed thing it does come a little bit with the experience, but it's more about bravery. Just bloody do it. Put something on paper really quickly and then throw it away and get to the next one. A lot of people have asked about Austin Mann Architects process. At the start of a project, a handful of us go out to site, and a handful of us actually just sit down for like half an hour, just really quickly testing ideas. So we've all got pens out, and it could be this, it could be that, could be that. And then I basically just sit there contributing, but then it's like, oh, I like that one. And they're basically just little bubble diagrams. I'm going to take this away and play with it a little bit. And then usually I get lost in the fog of war that I always talk about and bring it back to the group again and say, I was trying to do this and I was trying to do that. And that's when they quite often will go, well, you know, it feels like maybe you're doing this. It's like, oh, that's good. And then you go and you let it evolve again. It's not
you
linear.
evolve towards that.
Yep.
Rather than, you know, just a throwaway line that you say at the end.
Yeah. It's
You
about
make it, you do
amount
it, so you mean it.
And it's about rigour. That's a really important word.
So what are some of the ideas that you can throw at it? You know, could it be environmental? Could it be orientation? Could it be use? Could it be
Legislation,
legislation?
especially
Could it
on type blocks, I find it really interesting.
be structural order?
Structural ID, that's always fun.
Yes.
And these sound like simple principles, but they're actually generous principles. It means that we're being less esoteric, because there's a lot of ideas people produce that are just about seeming clever to other architects or the architectural profession, where that list of ideas or fundamental principles is something that's accessible to the human animal, so therefore anybody. So this is going to be a short video, but this has actually been quite a long discussion that we've had, so there's going to be a heap more content on Patreon. So if you want to hear more about this bullshit, get on Patreon. Patreon! I want my cup.
I will get one.
He
made.
promised me a Stay Hydrated People cup, which I could carry around. Num 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 num. Do you want one of those? I want one of those. I would pay
$1 billion.
$1 billion for one of those cups. Get me one.